Hello, my absolutely beautiful astrology soulmates. Welcome to to this live stream that was supposed to be a video, and that was not working out for us, so we're going to be doing it live stream style. But I am really excited to talk about this topic of Jupiter in Cancer and maybe a little bit of a different view of where this is coming in for me in some of the work that we're going to be doing as we experience Jupiter in Cancer as this transit. So I'm looking forward to bringing you some insights that I also shared and talked about at NORWAC with fellow colleagues and fellow astrology lovers. And it was just such a really beautiful calling that I can't wait to share with you. So, one of the concepts that I'm thinking a lot about as it's coming through astrologically in terms of Jupiter being in Cancer is what a deep call that we're in for a lot of rebalancing because we're entering this era in this time of deep energetic rebalancing. And some of you have maybe been feeling it in your body, in your relationships, in your ability to rest. And you know how much I've been talking about the Venus Reset program and how 2 years ago that came in so strong for me. And I didn't understand why this program was being created through me. And today I get it because those symptoms of rebalancing, you're not imagining them. I'm not imagining them, right? And as we're coming around here into Jupiter moving into Cancer on June 9th, it's going to begin a 1 year journey through the archetype of Cancer, the sacred mother, the emotional body, and the soul, I believe, of feminine containment. Okay. But today, like I said, we're going to come at this from a different lens. You also have your other Jupiter in Cancer video that I welcome you to check out. It's very good as well. Because here, when we regard Jupiter going into Cancer, it's not just as, I think, this benevolent gift bringer, but actually acting as the mentor and the teacher to help us understand what we have truly forgotten about feminine and masculine energy, but really in particular, feminine energy. And as Jupiter acts as that teacher here to help us restore that balance, right? Because depending on where your polarity is at, really truly your gut polarity, whether it's more feminine or it's more masculine, truly, not with all the bravado, right? But wherever it's at, I think that Jupiter is going to act as this teacher this time because it's a world. We are living in a world, I believe, that has become a bit emotionally and spiritually exhausted because the energies are a bit out of whack, right? Now, something when we look back astrologically as well that has happened that I just want us to take time to consider in our perspectives here today is that when Pluto moved through Capricorn, which is a feminine energy was able to rise and rise a lot more quickly, right? But along the way of that 20-year journey, it's almost as if it kind of overcorrected in some way, right? And it began to embody, especially towards the end of the cycle, a bit more of an imbalance, which almost could look like it's more of a masculine energy, right? And it forgot to seek the soften. And now that Pluto has moved into Aquarius, the scales are swinging backwards and it's not gentle. It's not gentle. So I think that something we can very seriously consider is that this Jupiter in Cancer transit is going to be a real classroom, right? Like a real divine classroom. But I want to jump in just a little bit more and share my thoughts on this. So, and first of all, the question that comes for me is like, okay, what happened? What happened in our energetic balance? Right. So let's go back to that Pluto and Capricorn for a minute because I feel like I left a little bit out. I'm so excited to share this with you. And normally I'm super articulate, but I'm formulating this and it's just coming through me. So we're going to roll. But as Pluto journeyed through Capricorn, and we saw that rise of the more feminine energy, but we also saw a rise of the feminine energy in terms of ambition, power, necessity, things being overdue, right? women were able to step into more visibility, more leadership, more influence, beautiful things, right? But often to rise in order to step into that, there had to be this adoption of the very structures of power that were more modeled towards centuries of masculine energy, right? So, what was once an embodied power to be soft became strategic. What was meant to be a receptive energy became constantly on and producing. We gained status, but feminine energy also lost peace, right? So it became this tender place. And something else happened. I think that we unknowingly began to push the sacred masculine out of the room, right? We labeled it as dangerous, toxic, unworthy. And in the pursuit of rising, many feminine energies, which I'm going to just say women for the sake of this particular broadcast, but feel free to use feminine energy how it works for you, right? Stopped receiving, stopped trusting, stopped resting. Our nervous systems, our wombs, and our relationships are now really, really telling the story of that. So I think in this way, we are seeing the painful signs right now of this imbalance all around us, right? We've got a rise of sexless marriages and emotional disconnection, an epidemic of burnout, especially in high performing women. Men confused or ashamed of how to even engage feminine energy, what is sacred masculine energy. And, I've had the chance to have a conversation with my children who are obviously much younger than me and to kind of get down to more causes and conditions with them. And there's this little bit of starving for a connection, but a fear of surrendering even into having that connection. And I want to be clear. This is not, my perspective is not coming from blame. There's no blame here. It's about healing. What can we use the astrology to acknowledge around us, right? And I think that it starts with recognizing the gap between where we are and where maybe we're meant to be, right? So I was watching, and I'm always watching. I have a Libra stellium, so I'm always watching people. I'm watching what's happening around me. And I was just been breathing in some of these symptoms of disconnection, and please, listen with me. Tell me if you're experiencing these, because you might be living with this and not know it or know exactly what it is. So, just very gently, I ask you, have you, especially as a woman, have you stopped resting even when you're exhausted? Are you struggling with receiving and especially receiving without needing to justify it or justify your worth? In your relationships, let's get down to the nitty-gritty in your relationship, especially maybe your marriage or your partnership. Are you feeling more like a roommate than you're in a partnership where you're in some kind of polarity that creates the sexual energy that's allowed to be there? What about your body? The Venus Reset program, we get into the sacred pelvic bowl, but in your body, is it tight? Is it braced? Like you're constantly preparing to protect instead of being able to like soften into the room when you walk into it, soften into your own presence. And these things, as these symptoms are creeping up, what comes along with them is it's easier for me to perform than to feel. It's easier for me to give advice than to ask for help. Let me ask you something. In the space where you have, if you do have connection with someone who is in a masculine energy, men for the sake of this conversation, or a stronger masculine energy, do you, does your partner feel emotionally safe enough to live in that masculine energy around you, or afraid because maybe he is afraid to be seen as aggressive or toxic or irrelevant, or honestly afraid that you think that of them, right? Maybe, where in your energy currently, and this is just the exploration, are you clinging to control, not because you want to, right? Not because you want to, but because you're afraid that there's no one else to hold all of these pieces together. We're in a time where when I just have to look around and see what this new system is kind of bringing in, trying to break down, but it's a time where I can look around and go, wow, this is in relational breakdown. There's a lot of identity crisis going on here, but I don't believe that with this transit of Jupiter in Cancer, with Pluto moving into Aquarius, that we're failing. I think it's because we're clearing out the debris that's been here for a long time, and we're going to have an opportunity to reset it. Feminine energy, because it's bonking up against now this Pluto in Aquarius, and the rest of the outer planets are going to move into masculine signs as well. So that feminine energy is you can't overcome these planets, right? We're going to be asked to receive again. And masculine energy is going to be asked to stand again. But I think today, both are terrified and they are bruised and they are unsure of how to do this. And this is what I love about astrology, because I think that this is where Jupiter in this particular transit gets to come in, right? Because Jupiter is going to act as the teacher and the mentor to show us how to get to the other side. I have heard plenty of things and been guilty of thinking it myself, that Jupiter is just going to be this bringer of blessings, right? It's all going to be good. We're going to be living our blessed life. And I think that's true. But more importantly, remembering that Jupiter being that teacher will also bring us teachers, will also bring us mentors to help us. Um, is something that I want to keep in mind, that we get the wisdom that Jupiter offers by going through the experience. So, as Jupiter is traveling here in Cancer, teaching us to turn inward, to go more sacred, right? It's not a classroom of simply heady knowledge. It's emotional wisdom, it's energetic wisdom. So, this is the Pluto acting as the professor. And if you're in my school, you know that the professors set the syllabus for everything that we're going to learn, right? And there's no changes being made to the syllabus, but Jupiter and Saturn are our tutors. So, in the curriculum of needing to see what this masculine vibration is about, our tutor Jupiter shows up, helping us to see where we find safety, remembering how to nurture without burning out, and of asking, how do I be? How do I be? Instead of always doing, how do I receive? So something else I was thinking about is just the nature of Cancerian energy, because it doesn't just, Cancer's not like charts and bullet points. It's not a Virgo kind of energy, right? It speaks in feelings. It speaks in the language of intuition. It speaks in the language of energy and the wisdom of the body as well. So while Jupiter is here, I think we're going to also, both energies, masculine and female, be asked to learn what it means to build containment, to create emotional safety, first for ourselves, but then for our relationships as we move out from there. And containment is not about restriction, it's protection. It's the bowl that holds the water, the structure that holds the softness, right? So during this time, Jupiter may guide us to old concepts, very old concepts of what the polarity of masculine and feminine is. It's not, it's masculine and feminine, but new teachings about how we engage it. Where are we finding information in our nervous system, in womb healing, in sexual healing, in the need for relational polarity, for its Cancer, ancestral healing could certainly come up. masculine sacredness, because we cannot reflect femininity if there's no masculine energy to mirror off of, right? So expect, I think, during this transit, friends, your teachers to show up, teachers and mentors talking about these concepts. This is something you guys have seen, especially if you've been following here for a while, that in my state of development right now, I'm talking a lot about coming back to soft. I'm talking a lot about using the guidance of the astrology to train our nervous systems to accept higher levels of relaxation and not just chaos all the time. But your teachers could be coming from unexpected places. And I bet you the most unexpected place that you see it coming from are old texts, elders, old stories that we have been told that we thought were poo-pooed on, right? And more intuitive paths, because it's just the natural movement of energy. Something I love about it as well is that I think that this transit will allow masculine energy to rise into its sacred position, not to over dominate, right? But to protect. And the feminine energy will get to receive again, and not with this mentality of weakness, but of wisdom. So listen, we're in Pluto's classroom for sure. We're in all of the outer planets are the professors. They tell us what we are going to learn. But as we experience this Jupiterian energy, we're not being tested here. We are not being tested here. I don't believe that. I believe we're being mentored. And if we listen closely, I think that we'll be shown how to heal ourselves, how to heal each other, and that the new container that we're all trying to live in as well is going to, it's going to get its own re-education. A couple other things I just want to say. I don't want to make this entirely long, but I want us to all take something from this and have a think. Have a think about where this is right in your life, in your belief system, and in your experience. But I think that there is also a reckoning, and it's already on. I mean, man, I got to have this conversation pretty full blast with astrologers and non-astrologers alike. But I do think in the current classroom, there is a bit of a reckoning with the wounds between women, right? And this is another layer that I think that we have to slash get to look at honestly. And it's the one between us as women. Because if we're going to talk about feminine energy returning to some kind of rightful balance or place or softness, that safety, that sovereignty, I think we have to talk about how we ourselves have wounded each other. And that's a bit of a tender conversation, right? That's a bit of a tender conversation. But I do think in this classroom, we find out also that it's true because many of us carry wounds from other women, not from systems or from men, but I'm talking about from our sisters, our mothers, our friends. And many of us have caused wounds, consciously or not, as well. We have judged each other's bodies. We have whispered that she wasn't a real woman because she didn't have children, want to have children. We've questioned each other's sexuality, our style, our spiritual path. We've looked at another woman's curves or success and let comparison turn into a quiet resentment, passive comments like, oh, you're brave to wear that, or I could never stay home with the kids all day, right? Like these little things. And where we've created somewhere within ourselves, we have to address where we've created little silent hierarchies. Who's feminine enough? Who's soft enough? Who's spiritual enough? Who's empowered enough? We have participated in it. And we've also, I believe, been hurt by it. So Jupiter in Cancer, I think during this transit doesn't just call us to heal our relationship, with looking at where the masculine can rise and all of these systems of over there. But I think it calls us also to heal our relationships with each other, with our own energetic dynamics, to ask, where have I made another woman feel like she's not enough? right? Where did I distance myself from another woman because I deemed her to be too emotional? Her grief, her rage, her joy, it was just too much for me. It's too messy. She's too inconvenient, right? Where did I decide that someone else's version of feminine energy was wrong because it didn't look like my own? These are the kinds of questions that I think Cancer wants us to feel into, not shame ourselves, right? Feminine energy, the quickest way to little feminine energy is to use shame. So we're not here for that, right? But instead, open a door to repair. So this year, I think, invites us also back to sisterhood, not the curated kind, right? It's not the polished kind. It's the kind that says, I see your softness. I see your crown. Honor your path. I want us both to win. Let me tip your crown up. And I also think there's something on the path here that is profound where it is like, fuck, another woman is going to have to help save me because the masculine energy can't understand this portion of my experience. But if I've blocked myself off from it, I don't have access to that. I have access to pain. And so, what this may require for many of us in our experiences, wherever they may be, are apologies. They may require mourning what we have lost, honestly, by competing with each other instead of comforting one another, instead of telling each other the truth about where we're at. But it is a sacred reckoning, nonetheless, that I think leads to real healing on the other side of this transit. And if we want to reclaim the feminine, we have to first reclaim our connection to it. We have to reclaim that we have to reclaim each other is what I think, this will come down to. So I want to just wrap this up because I don't want to go on too long, but I do want to speak to the other side because on my side, focusing a lot in the Venus reset, coming back to the soft, coming back to that feminine energy, brilliant, love that for us, happy to be there. But I do see and had conversations with other male astrologers, and I've had conversations with people who have nothing to do with astrology, and these men are trying to come together. So I think that there's already the symptom of the sacred masculine rising. It's juicy containment that the feminine has honestly, I think, been starving for. So, okay, let me let me get on this so we can get off of this, right? But this can be in this time of the world, I realize, kind of radical, but I am curious if what is coming through me is going to be something you feel in your bones. But I do think that the sacred masculine is coming back to life. And it is not this distorted version that we have been taught or built fear around, right? It's not this control or this absentness, but it is instinctual. It is in polarity to feminine energy, but it's also embodied, it's grounded, it's heart-led, and that's the important part, I think, that my vision, my lens is focused on because it's the kind that being embodied, being heart-led, it knows how to hold space without needing to control it, right? It's masculine energy that is healthy. And when it's healthy, it becomes sexy, it becomes juicy, it becomes potent containment. I mean, it's just a polarity to feminine energy. I can't stop touching my body. So it becomes juicy, but it's the kind of energy that I think feminine energy has been starving for and not felt safe enough to trust. But here's the thing, even in that, feminine energy can't really receive unless masculine energy can contain. And this isn't about having a man, right? When feminine energy is getting healthy, it starts to touch feminine energy all around it. When masculine energy is getting healthy, it's all around it, right? But in the feminine vibration, we can't receive if there's not a pool to receive from. And the masculine also can't rise if every attempt to lead is met with bitterness and rejection and fear. So, as women, as the feminine energy, however you need to take that, it's another place where I think we're going to be mentored and asked to get honest about, are we really ready to receive? Are we really capable of receiving? Are we really ready to be held? Or have we built up so much around our trauma, our stories, the very thing that we're simply craving from that deep intuitive place? Now it feels threatening when someone's trying to give us something, when a masculine energy is trying to give us something, it just is threatening, right? Um, because I think that Jupiter in Cancer is going to bring us again these teachers, these mirrors, these moments where the answer to those questions, or at least those questions that I'm kind of perching today, are going to become unavoidable. And as this rebalancing is unfolding, we're going to be asked, all of us, masculine and feminine energy, I think we're all going to be asked to make a choice. Will we participate in the healing, right? Will we let ourselves soften into sacred masculine energy as it's trying and beginning to rise, so that when it's finally here, we can receive it? Or are we going to stay in cycles of bitterness, of shutdown, of rejection, of guarding our pain like that's the beautiful crown we should be wearing, but we're starving on the inside? Because I think that the truth is, if we don't, especially in that feminine vibration, if we do not choose softness, that when that masculine energy and as they're grouping together and healing, as they rise and safety comes, we might destroy the very thing that we're praying for. And how many of you know this to be true in your own lives today, right? Whether it be through a very good job or a very good partner who's coming into your life and you literally can't receive what's happening there. So to be clear though, this is not just about romance definitely in there, but this is also about those structures that hold our society, our friendships, our communities together. Masculine energy, I think, that is alive and devoted becomes like the riverbank. And feminine energy gets to flow creatively through there safely, right? It's the container that allows us to rest, to feel safe, to receive without the performance. But that only happens if we can participate in learning to soften and be rid of the defense mechanisms that have been wrapped around our softness. And Jupiter will show us this. I believe that gently, but unmistakably, that the way we're going to move forward is going to have to be through participation and through trust in this particular energy. And I think it is also going to pull us into the space where we have to stop blaming and we have to start rebuilding. So it's not going to be this place where it's like, oh, the masculine energy just fixed itself and feminine energy just fixed itself. It's like we're going to both have to have this acceptance of the learning of how to do this. Feminine energy is learning and practicing, hopefully, how to be soft, how to return to softness. And simultaneously, that masculine energy is learning to rise and contain again. So it's not just going to be a show up ready for me kind of thing. It's a we are actively in this work together and we're all absolutely built for it. So, okay, I think that this is our invitation to relearn, just everything. But this, for me, doing this video as this is coming and pouring through me, is your invitation, and mine, not just to try to hustle and rush into balance, but to continue over this transit to surrender into wisdom. And some of that wisdom is going to be very old. When your grandma told you this thing over here about men, hopefully it was healthy-ish and you were like, no, that's really not it. Or when you hear things about the polarities of how masculine and feminine energy hears, I hope that the wisdom will be an open-mindedness to listen and to see if that's right intuitively, not intellectually. Because Jupiter in Cancer isn't just giving us space to explore this and heal this. I think it gives truth. Jupiter is a truth bringer. So, listen, if you have been feeling the exhaustion, if you've been feeling or experiencing more emotional shutdown, more sexual shutdown, if you've been aching or craving connection, but you're feeling disconnection in yourself, in your relationships, I just want to also put this out there so that you have hope because I don't think that this is the end. I think that this is the beginning of a reteaching in the new world that we're living in. So let this transit, as all of them, be sacred. Let it be slow. Let it be emotional. Let it bring you to the mentors, to the books, to the guides who remind you to come back to this feminine energy, or if you're one of our masculine listeners, to your masculine dynamic, right? Let the masculine call back to its sacred role. Let the feminine come back to the divine role, the divine truth. And let's rebuild our capacity to rest, receive, and relate with one another because we are all learning in this together. Jupiter is a great tutor. And, it's at home. We're at home. It's on the horizon. Home is on the horizon. All right, my absolutely brilliant friends. I know this is a little bit different perspective than the content that we are usually engaging, but also, this is the brilliance that I have loved about being with you guys almost 15 years now that I get to show up with you and grow in public and see where I'm changing, where I'm growing, and what the astrology through me wants to say to you. So I hope this makes some sense. Please share with me your experiences, your thought, where you're growing, where you're being challenged right now in the comment section down below. At the end of this video, you'll see 2 other videos. I would love for you to check them out. And if you have not subscribed, if you have not liked this video, please make sure that you do so. It lets the algorithm know that we're talking about good stuff over here, and it lets me know that what I'm doing is valuable to you as well. All right, my beautiful friends, I love you a ton. I will see you in our next connection.